Garden building with the list up.
That's a very good question, and I want to respond to that. The difference in the 1,300 and whatever that is, which is an estimate, what we call a windshield estimate. That's just what we see, we'll write down. The difference between that and the addresses that are posted out here is this. Those addresses out there, my staff has gone to each one of those places, essentially stood on the slab or the site, took GPS coordinates, loaded them up in their machine, brought them back into our 911 addressing office over by the courthouse, where we asked the 911 address folks to match up that coordinate with the correct street address. In many cases, there's no mailbox there. There's no way to know what that address is. I'm doing that, and it's slow and it's tedious because it's all on foot, bringing information in, processing that information, double checking that information, because if I say, or my staff tells me that there's a house destroyed at the address shown, there is. I want to be very clear about that. That is truthful, it's factual, it's not estimated. We're doing that, and eventually we'll catch up. Obviously, for us to go to near 1,400 different addresses is going to take time. They tell me that they'll be bringing data in at the end of the shift today, and we'll hope to have by early or mid-morning tomorrow an increase in those. When we're going to get through is when we actually get to every one of those 1,400 or whatever there's going to be. As the judge mentioned, there's still some places where it is not appropriate for my staff, which are firefighters, by the way, it's not appropriate for them to go into simply to get GPS coordinates of a place.
I just want to know what condition village addresses are up there right now, correct?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
No Tahitian addresses are on the verification.
That is correct. If you'll kind of notice, there's a trend. Those addresses began at the north part of the fire in the Circle D, KC Estates, and they're working south. Why is that? Because that end is the least active.
Can you talk about maybe some of the lessons you learned during the 2009 fire and how that's helping out here in the community?
Certainly, we did learn a lot of lessons. Many of them we're implementing here now. In that fire, we did not use the technique I just described of coming up with absolute certain damage estimates. We relied too much on anecdotal evidence and the lack of that kind of science, and so we decided we want to apply it on this one.
Hey, Sheriff, we've heard reports from citizens, some of them are concerned about people being checked going into the neighborhood, but that's not necessarily coming out of the neighborhood. Is that a concern that you have, or are people being checked coming out as well?
Yes.
Some of the areas?
As far as I know, people are being checked either way. I mean, as far as, I'm sorry, Sheldon, are we talking about the areas that we just opened up, or
I guess it's a little bit of both. It's a whole other situation. People are just concerned about getting in places where...
All right. Okay, I had a question about whether or not people are being checked entering or exiting the areas. First of all, the only ones who should be entering the area are the ones that are authorized to enter the areas within the designated burn area are either public safety officials, electrical contractors, utility contractors, pipeline folks, gas line folks, that type of stuff. People who are coming out, once they come out, they're being told, you know, you're not going back in. And so, yes, we're checking everybody. Beyond our barricades, we obviously are continuing our patrols within those areas. We see people out driving around. They're being stopped, being identified, and escorted from the area.
Do you have plenty of law enforcement? There's no need for any more?
We have plenty of law enforcement on the ground right now. There's probably over 200 officers out there right now. Our only additional resources that we'll be bringing in is when we get ready to go into our Phase 2 reentry plan.
I know you mentioned it was 134 additional homes. Can you give us the exact number, though, when you add that to yesterday? And then also, if it's around 1,400, how many more homes remain in question?
Okay, you do the math for me. Yesterday, we posted 234. I believe that's correct. Today, we posted 134. So the delta right now from 1,400 to whatever that is how many more houses we're going to check. And then if there's still more houses, we're going to check more than those.
I have a question about, we're allowed into an area that has had burn, like your house has been burned. Do we have to be really concerned about chemical hazards, or, I mean, if we're going to go and look through what's there, should we be protecting ourselves some way?
I'm glad you brought that up. That's all a part of our second phase reentry plan.
Okay,
the answer to it directly is yes, you do have to be concerned about hazardous substances, soot, smell, odors, whatever might be there. I mentioned in an earlier conference, we have people that are out there actually doing a search for those hazardous areas, and we'll be using that intelligence a lot to determine how we go through the second phase of entry.
And you'll talk about it then, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Once people are allowed to re-enter, is it recommended that they stay there? Are they allowed to stay there? Or do you still recommend them waiting a little bit until things can get more clear?
That's part of the planning. That's part of the planning process.
Yeah. Are you addressing the people that are affected by the re-entry we put on today?
Once an area is open to re-enter, is it totally safe for people to stay there in their homes if it's still there for the night?
We think so. We think that the risk is so slight and that we think we can mitigate such risk that we do believe it's safe. Now, we want to emphasize that we would prefer people to try to adjust to the fact that there's a lot of traffic. The traffic flow is not the same as it was before, so not a lot of coming and going is what we're asking for. Anything else?
When is Phase 2 going to start, you say?
Phase 2 going to start when all of these hazards have been remediated and we find it safe to launch. We're working on the plan now. We know what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. We just don't know where we'll start yet.
Has the governor or the president offered any equipment and/or manpower assistance as of now?
If you're talking about for suppression of this fire, the answer is absolutely yes. If you look around, you'll see federal, state, and local equipment. The reality is behind the closed gate.
Well, unfortunately, we lost the signal out of there, but we got the gist of it, I believe.
Right.